Hi guys, in this video I'm going to talk about personal pronouns, also known as subject pronouns. So I want you guys to remember that they're called personal pronouns or subject pronouns because we're going to study a myriad of other pronouns. We're going to study indirect object pronouns, direct object pronouns, prepositional pronouns. Don't worry about that too much, but I do want you to remember that these things that we're going to learn in this video are called personal pronouns or subject pronouns. It is going to be so much easier for you to understand grammar if you understand the name of the structures. So step one, remember the name. Personal pronouns, subject pronouns. So what exactly are pronouns? Pronouns are words we often use when we talk about a person, an animal, or a thing when we're not using their name. For example, instead of saying Karen goes to the market, you would say she goes to the market. Instead of saying my dog Sammy is ill, you would say it is ill. Instead of saying the table is red, you would say it is red. Those are some examples of pronouns. At the end of the day, the goal of pronouns is for people to be more concise and less repetitive. So what are the personal subject pronouns in English? I'm sure that you know these very well. Now, what are the personal pronouns in Spanish? I'm sure that you also know these very well, but they're a little bit more complicated because they're just simply more of them. So the personal pronouns in Spanish are yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, nosotras, ellos, ellas, and ustedes. Before we move on how to use these structures, I do want to make a point about pronunciation. So I see a lot of students saying yo instead of yo and ella instead of ella. Usually the way that Spanish speakers pronounce the Y and the double L is by having their upper teeth and their lower teeth touch. So first I'm going to pronounce yo and ella incorrectly, and then I'm going to pronounce it correctly. And I want you to look at my teeth. So the incorrect way of saying yo and ella would be yo and ella. Do you see that my upper teeth and my lower teeth don't touch? Now I'm going to pronounce it the way that usually Spanish speakers pronounce it. Yo. Do you see that my upper teeth and my lower teeth are touching? Yo, ella, ella. I hope that this helps your pronunciation. The first thing that might confuse you about Spanish pronouns is that we have a formal and informal register. So for informal situations, when you're talking to a friend, a family member, a kid, or someone your age, you're going to use tú. For example, if I talk to my dad, because he's a family member, I would say tú. If I talk to a kid, a little kid, because they're younger than me, I would use tú. If I talk to a friend, I would use tú. And if I talk to a colleague my age, I would use tú. Now, it might get a little bit confusing with usted. Usted uses the formal register. So in situations when you're talking to people who are older than you, strangers, or people who are higher in an authority hierarchy, you would use usted. If I was talking to my boss, I would use usted. If I was talking to a person that approached me in the metro, I would use usted. If I was talking to someone who was older than me, or at least significantly older than me, I would use usted. The second thing that might get confusing is that we and they have feminine versions. We have nosotros, nosotras, ellos, and ellas. So if you are a girl and you're in a group of girls and you're referring to all of yourselves, then you would use nosotras. If you were a boy or you went by he, him pronouns and you were in a group of boys or people who went by he, him pronouns, then you would say nosotros. The interesting thing is that if there are 100 girls and just one boy, then that group would have to refer to itself by nosotros. Why? Because in Spanish, the male or the masculine is the default. So again, if there are 100 girls and just one boy, that group would have to refer to itself as nosotros. because the male in Spanish is the default. The same thing goes for ellos and ellas. If you were referring to a group of 100 girls and just one boy, you would have to use ellos. So just remember that there is that bizarre rule, and it is something that Spanish speakers don't even think about, although perhaps we should revise, but it is how the language currently works. So it is the status quo of the language. Now let's do some exercises to test our comprehension. So what are nouns? Nouns are places, people, or things. What are pronouns? Pronouns are words that stand for nouns. For example, instead of saying Karen goes to the market, then Karen returns home, and Karen washes the dishes, you can say Karen goes to the market, then she returns home and she washes the dishes. So it's a lot more concise and less repetitive. What are the subject pronouns in English? I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. What are the subject pronouns in Spanish? Yo, remember the pronunciation. Yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, nosotras, ellos, and ellas, and ustedes. So now let's do some exercises for pronouns. We feminine are pretty, right? Nosotras somos bonitas. They feminine are tall. They feminine is ellas son altas. We feminine eat at the dining hall. Nosotras comemos en la cafetería. They feminine drink water. Ellas beben agua. I am intelligent. Remember the pronunciation. Yo soy inteligente. You formal are a doctor. Usted es un doctor. The reason you are using usted and not tú is because you probably don't know your doctor in friendly terms. He's probably not your friend. He is someone that has a certain relationship with you, but is a formal relationship. So that is why doctor is usted. You informal are a kid. So remember that with kids and people who are younger, you use tú. Tú eres un niño. You informal are my mom. For relatives and people that you know very well and that you have a very close relationship with, you would use tú. Tú eres mi mamá. You plural are my bosses. Then remember that you has a plural form, which is ustedes. I forgot to mention that in English, you don't have this plural form of you, but in Spanish we do. So when you're talking to multiple people, right, and you want to use the plural form of you, you would have to use ustedes. Son mis jefes. You plural are my friends. Ustedes son mis amigos. So that is it for today, guys, and I hope that you enjoyed this video and this has been helpful for you to really understand what subject pronouns, or also known as personal pronouns, are.